What do you do if you want to keep providing your best, doing your best, and being your best, but you lack the resources to grow? Hey, what's up? I'm Ken. This is kenfuTV, and each week I release videos in the martial arts, philosophy, technique, training, that sort of thing. So if that's the sort of thing you're into, I hope you stick around. I hope you subscribe. I hope if you like this video and it has value for you, that you smash that like button and drop a comment while you're down there to, I don't know, ask your own questions, have your own commentary on what we're talking about. Some of these videos get kind of long, so I always make sure to drop chapter markers down below in the video description and the comments so that you can jump to the part that you're interested in. But today we're talking about a comment that came from last week's video. Last week's video was about kind of the context of being in a dojo where there are too many black belts. The comment on that video went the other direction and said, what do you do if you're the only one and you don't have people around you who can challenge you and bring the best out of you and help keep you growing? This comment comes from Craige Thompson, and he says, what do you do when the ability to grow becomes stifled, or in some cases disappears? Particularly if that situation is coming from your own dojo and ryu. What if you're the last man standing, so to speak, with such a gap between you and your other students, be that age or experience level or knowledge level, etc., that you simply can't grow anymore? What do you do if your responsibilities to your dojo as an instructor completely overtake and overshadow you? What do you do if you simply don't have the time or ability to reach out? I mean, I'm quite in a conundrum at the moment within my martial arts journey, and nothing I've learned or experienced has prepared me for being that one guy left behind, holding the rope while everybody else is gone. I wanted to speak to this because, actually, I know what this is like a little bit. I've been really fortunate that my instructor's still around and still comes around and we get to train. Lately, we've been able to train once a week and be able to continue moving myself forward. But in a lot of ways, that's supplemental to the personal training that I continue to do on my own. Because once a week for, let's face it, less than an hour by the time you change and do all that kind of stuff, it's hard to truly make a lot of progress in that time. So instead, it's more just kind of realigning and providing some guidance on tips and refinement on the things that we're working on so that I can go continue to work on it, and then we'll refine it more next time. In a lot of ways, this is what his training was like. He traveled a lot with work. His instructor was not in town, and so in order to train, he'd have to train on his own and then find time to meet up with his instructor for a day or two, learn as much as he possibly could, get everything shoved into him as fast as it could, so that he could take it and continue to train on that until the next opportunity came along. And we've had discussions about that recently because that has even impacted the way that he teaches. He's used to, because he was taught with all of that information coming all at once, that he teaches that way. He'll slam one thing into, and once you kind of get it, he's on to the next thing and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And so him and I in the dojo have a bit of a balance because he'll do it that way, and I'm more of a, let's make sure you got the details, let's get technical about it, let's pull it apart, and so you get a little bit of both. My other instructors aren't in town. Jiu-jitsu, eskrima, that kind of stuff, it's not right here in town. So the same thing kind of has to happen when training via correspondence, or we get together once every couple of years, maybe once a year if we're not in a pandemic. My eskrima instructor specifically has said the martial arts are lonely arts. We spend most of our time training alone. That can be a really difficult concept if that's not kind of the way you work, if you typically need guidance and need somebody helping you move along. So I wanted to speak to this a bit. I wanted to give a little bit of advice, at least the things that I kind of think of when I think of these kinds of situations. I see maybe a few different opportunities. The first thing that I want to mention comes from multiple videos that I've done because I just think that it's so important, which is that you have to define your goals and assess them and redefine them frequently. You've got to make sure that you're on track for yourself, that whatever you're doing, whatever training you're doing, whatever work that you're doing, whatever it is, continues to move you towards that goal. When you're working alone, it's easy to get pulled this way and pulled that way. If that's not checked, then pretty soon you pulled this way and then that forks off and pulls this way and then forks off and pulls this way, and then pretty soon you're miles from where you were intending to go. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the direction that you ended up going is satisfying you in some way or giving you some kind of perspective or becomes your new goal. Maybe it even helps you define a new goal. And that's why assessment is important, is because during that assessment, you decide, am I headed the right direction? And if your goal changed, it's good because then you can refocus and say, okay, no, I did change. This is my focus now. So how do I continue to push this way? What direction do I need to go to push this way? Or you go, nope, I'm off track. Let's circle back around. Let's keep what was just useful of what I just did, and let's bring that back into the fold and keep moving. Next up, you got to assess what your options are for continuing to work with either your instructor or some new instructors, some people that you can work with to continue moving yourself forward. And maybe that involves a little bit of travel. Maybe that involves some seminars. These days we've got online seminars and things like that. But back in the day, oh my God, the pandemic has gone so long that I'm saying back in the day for 2018. Okay. Well, the old way, the way that we hope to get back to, training in person, gatherings, seminars in person. That's a way to keep your skills and your training up, is to keep working that forward. And I should pause for a second and mention that where you are in your journey plays a big role for this. If you just hit Shodan, then that journey's still pretty fresh. There's a lot of things to still be working on. You've probably just recently started doing the whole teaching thing and moving things forward. So that's not a great time to be without a teacher. It's a time that you can be. It can be done. But if you're in that case, then it really helps to have other instructors or other things that can continue to help you. If you're further down, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th dan, something like that, then you probably have some experience and some knowledge of what you want to see and how you think you could get there and what you want to see out of people. And so it really kind of depends on where you are on the path, how far along you are. But it never hurts to find instructors. And so sometimes I'll use Eskrima as an example. That was one that I started training for a few months. We broke for the summer, and then when it came back, it was on the same night that I had already committed to doing something else, so I wasn't able to make it. And so for years, my training was on my own when I would work on it in the kitchen while I was making breakfast, like just whatever I could do to keep my training going, until later I was in a position where I could create an opportunity to invite that instructor to train in our school rather than going to their school. He was at a spot where he was able to do that, and we were able to keep going. And then I started picking up where I left off. And thankfully, because of the time that I spent on my training, that was easy to do. It was easy to pick up right there, and he was able to give me more. But that was all to say that fast forward, and his life kind of went different directions. His thoughts on things kind of went different directions, and he kind of stepped away and kind of let me take over for things. And I ended up starting the Eskrima group that I train now, that group of people, that school that I teach out of. And so what ended up being useful for me was going to his teacher. He had got me connected to him, and so that became, and so instead of reaching to my instructor for that, I ended up reaching to his instructor, who really now I call my instructor. I'm getting it directly from there now. And that has been really helpful because it's really kind of, in a lot of ways, it's filled gaps and helped me see things differently, that were not necessarily passed on by the instructor I was working with, just because he was in the same boat. He had not had a lot of opportunity to continue working with his instructor that same way. So that continuation needed to happen. And because of that, I was able to reach out to other people in the art, other in the Filipino stuff for us, that's called maestros, and other maestros in the family. That really helped. I got an opportunity to continue to train and continue to learn from different people who I really respect, and that kept that knowledge going. For the karate, there was a period of time with my instructor where he traveled a lot with work, and his time was not there. So when he handed the school over to me to teach, it freed him up to be able to keep doing those things, which meant I didn't see him a lot, and we didn't train that way a lot. So a lot of my training was on my own. And at first there were other black belts around, and we continued to train, but then for different reasons, life gets in the way, jobs, you got to move, things like that. And then I was the only one. And in a similar boat, really, where the nearest student was nowhere near their black belt, and the experience level wasn't there. So again, it was back to solo training and research and just putting the time in on what I could do. So that's my first tip, first advice. See if you can connect with either your instructor or their instructor or something like that allows you to keep that training going directly, even if it's just from time to time, a couple of times a year, something. Second, if you can't, or supplementally, get connected to other instructors in other arts, be it similar or different, that allow you to continue to grow your understanding of the human body, of your body, of what it's able to do, how you generate power, how you move, how you throw, whatever it is that you want to become better at. Create a network of instructors that support you, that you can learn from. And maybe that's private lessons. Maybe that's taking classes on a night that you don't teach. Whatever it is, that will help you continue to grow. It'll either help you directly with exactly what you're doing, or it'll give you perspective that will help lend itself to helping you round out your knowledge. That's what happened to me. I was training Aikido, I was doing some boxing, I was training with different groups and different things, and that gave me different perspective on my art, and that allowed me to continue to improve myself in a way that gave me a deeper understanding of my art, so that I could continue to make sure that I knew where I wanted to go, and I knew how I was going to get there. And it gave me a bar. Part of it is just having a yardstick to measure what your growth even looks like. Are you growing? You got to be able to see that. The third thing is online resources. Joining groups that are, maybe you've got resources for your particular groups even, but then if not other groups, there are many on Facebook and other types of social media where you can get connected to people, do some training or share some videos back and forth, or continue to build your knowledge and continue to have your knowledge tested. That's a really big deal. It can't always just be in. You have to have something that's measuring your output, even if it's just course correction and making sure that what you think and understand about this is accurate as you continue to go that way, that you're not veering off course. So that can be really good. That can also create some other opportunities for training. You get to meet different people. Maybe they're one town over and you can go do some travel, and maybe they're not even an instructor or somebody at a higher level than you. They just have the ability to push you, to provide a challenge for you. So when you train or when you spar or when you work technique or you work drills or you work scenario-based training, that allows you to be challenged and allows you to work to your level. And on a really similar note is my last tip, which is maybe take a bit of a break on yourself and really focus on the students. Focus on closing that gap. Maybe for a little while, your bar doesn't raise as much. It's not anymore, it's just a little bit, but maybe in the meantime, you can bring their bar quicker and just close that gap. Get the people around you to be able to challenge you and help you and work with you. And that's one of the things that I've done, is now I've got people in the school who they are helping me. I've been able to put enough into them to be able to create their ability and raise their level so that they challenge me in a way that keeps me able to grow. And so if I need to work on something and I need to do something or try something, then I have people that are in that boat. And what it took was just maybe realizing that my growth was going to be stunted for a little bit while the tide raised the rest of the ships, so to speak. And what that did is that put me in a place that having that and closing that gap made it to where when it was time for my growth, right? So I took their growth and I brought it up. And then that kind of kept my growth a little bit. But then once this got to here, then suddenly my growth was able to start jumping again because that area was there and I was able to do it. I was able to work at that level now. That really helps put you back in a place where you're challenged again and you've got people able to challenge. It also gives you the ability to maybe have more of a break if they're able to help leading classes and stuff, and you can focus on other things, or maybe you can have them running something while you go do a seminar with somebody to further your knowledge. That's hugely, hugely helpful. And so while it's a bit of a cost of your time, it's a cost that's valuable. I mean, those people came to you for that anyway, but then also it's paying you back in your ability to grow, and it's making you a better teacher. And then I guess a bonus tip, something that I think about, something that I encourage in my students just as much as I encourage it in myself, is that when you are working a drill with somebody, when you are putting that time, is work to your level. Don't work to the level of the person that you're working with. And this is kind of a misnomer. People look at that and they go, well, okay, but if they're way lower than me, then that could be really rude or disrespectful or not help them. And there are ways, if you work on it. Just because you're doing the technique doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it with the same precision, the same accuracy, the same speed, the same body mechanic. It just means that, maybe you won't hit them as hard, or maybe you'll pull it before it's done, or something, but allowing you to work that speed. If I'm working with somebody who's really new, then I have the ability, the potential to work really slow and really lazy. Or when it's my turn, I feed to my level, and that's doing two things. It's allowing me to continue to work at my level, but it's also allowing them to see and learn from what your level looks like, so they can start to close that gap with you. And it's making sure that the time that you spend training is valuable. There are many, many ways to train in a capacity that doesn't actually build anything. You just went through the motions and you didn't actually test yourself. You didn't challenge yourself. You didn't grow. You just did it. Every action is having a result, but that doesn't mean the result was great, and that doesn't mean that you got as much as you could out of it. So work to your level, set that example, and the worst you have to do is communicate your expectations of what you want them to be doing at that time. So if you're moving really quickly because you want to be able to work your speed and your response, you go, okay, I want to be able to move really quick and I want to be able to hear and I want to be really accurate, but they're just not ready to move that fast. Then just keep reminding them that when it's their turn, you want them to go slow. You want them to be smooth, and encourage that as they do it. That was great. Do it like that. Speed up just a little bit. And then if they start speeding up to match your speed, and like, slow it back down, slow it back down. And maybe you run a couple reps slower so that helps them slow back down. But if you communicate, if you let them understand that you're training one thing and they're training another thing and you're both doing the same drill, but what you're pulling out of it is different, then you're allowing that to be okay. You're helping build that kind of training environment, and you're teaching them how to get the most out of their training. All of this is great, and all of this helps keep you at your level. The hardest part is the motivation, and I can easily say that one of the hardest things for me is when you feel like all of your time is going to establishing how the curriculum's working and who needs to work on what and who needs to grade next and what drills do we need to do and what are we going to be doing tonight, and you get to the end of the day and you're okay, made it through the day. And you turn up the next day and by the time you got done thinking about all that, you train and you do it and you just did it again and you haven't done anything. You haven't fed yourself. You haven't recharged yourself. And I 100% understand that. That's a real thing. And you have to recognize that it's real, that you can do exactly that. You can pour all of yourself into that and not take anything out of it. You know, in some ways, if there's not a good, healthy relationship on the mat, then really people are just stealing from you. They're taking from you and they're depleting your battery, and you've got to find ways to charge. And that's sometimes training with other people. That's sometimes working a drill that you want to work because it's charging you and helping you go, and maybe you're going, yeah, I don't expect you guys to learn this, but we're all going to do it together. It's going to be fun. It's just going to be a break, a mental break, but you're going to do something that you want to do that helps keep you motivated. All these things help. Motivation is the key. You've got to have that motivation. And don't be afraid to take a break. Maybe you need a night off. Maybe you need to close it for a night and just recharge, reset, put yourself back in a better place where you're not constantly behind. Sometimes you got to go, okay, we're doing this. Camera probably looks like. Sometimes you have to put yourself in a place where you, the class, and you are moving and you're keeping the class going, but you're not getting anywhere. So you got to put the class on hold so that you can catch back up and then keep going. And don't feel discouraged if that's the position you're in. Don't feel like the fact that that's all you're doing is holding you back from being your best, or that you're not giving your best, or you're not helping the students and helping the community with what you're doing. You are. It's really easy to see it that way. It's really easy to feel like you're not making the progress you need to make, and so therefore you're letting people down. But these things change. And as you get people brought up to a level where they can be a little more self-sufficient to themselves and they can handle some of that stuff, then you can continue to move that forward. And that group helps you move forward. And it's okay for that to happen that way. You don't always have to be 10 levels above the next person in order to be a good resource for them. And you don't always have to have people who are above you and at a higher level than you to be the thing that challenges you to grow. And the person who is above you or challenges you doesn't have to be in your same group or your same art or your same style. So give yourself the freedom to explore the things that you need, specifically you, to charge and reset and to grow. Because only you know what those are. The person next to you, even if it was two of you, the person next to you, what they need to grow and what they need to feel recharged might be entirely different than you. So it's okay to define what you need and make sure that you're getting it. I hope that's helpful. I hope if others of you have advice that you drop it in the comments and we start a conversation, because this is a real thing. Sometimes as people go, you end up in that situation where through attrition and different things, you're the top person in the class and there's nobody near your skill level and you feel stagnant. I know that Craige's not the only one. I know that I'm not the only one. So let's have a conversation. In the meantime, we'll look at comments from last week and then we'll wrap this up. Comments from last week. Life after black belt. What do you do when there's too many black belts and you don't feel like you're growing? I'm glad you guys are leaving comments. Obviously, Craige Thompson's comment from this video created the video that you just got done watching. And let's look at what other comments came out this week. Kenji Martial Arts says, for me, progression is definitely cross-training. I can absolutely see that. It's giving you the perspective. It's tying things together for you. It's allowing you to see your art in a new way. That's really, really helpful, really, really useful. And people need to do it. You got to make time for that. MG says, glad you mentioned Abernathy. He also had a video on Shuha-Ri. Anyone who trains any kind of kata from any style needs to go binge watch his videos right now. I completely agree. I He's also got a great audio podcast. If I'm honest, this channel happened because I binge watched or binge listened to his entire 10 years worth of his podcast, and it was excellent. It was thought provoking, and it really gave me a lot to chew on. And when I ran out of it, well, sometimes they say that you just need to make the thing that you want. And so I started this channel as my way of creating the podcast that I wanted to listen to. He goes on to say, my first task as a black belt was to revise the curriculum and belt system since it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. I use BJJ as a framework for the new belt system since I feel they currently have the most respected system for ranking. It's really true. I feel like there's not a belt system that has as much respect as that one does right now. His quick overview goes: white, I teach you to fight with 1 stick. Blue, I teach you to fight with 2 sticks. Purple, you fight with a knife, empty hand, and I teach you to wrestle, which is the dumog. Brown, I teach you other bladed weapons, forms, and anything you may have missed previously. Black is about research and development. You pick a specialty and train it extensively, thus adding to the art. Second degree is for people who want to teach. They get to lead classes and study adult education. That's interesting, that idea of you hit that rank if you continue to teach. If you don't, you stay at the rank before, is kind of what I'm understanding. And that's an interesting concept. They get to lead classes and study adult education, terminal and enabling objectives, etc. That's interesting too, teaching to teach. Third degrees actually get to teach and may open their own schools. Okay, so what's happening is second degree is you're preparing someone to become a teacher. So you got first degree, someone who's capable. Second degree, preparing someone to be a teacher, to make people who are capable. And then third is you actually get to start teaching. That's a really interesting idea. Anything above third is given as a formality, or if you have an instructor like mine, informality. Yeah, when it comes to FMA, that informality is a real thing, right? I think that's really cool. I think the way that you're approaching rank is really, really interesting. More of us need to spend time looking at how do we approach our system, our syllabus, our ranking systems, and the whole deal. Is it where it needs to be, or is it stuck in the 1980s like your previous thing was? What I also love about that comment is that Subhamnan also commented on that, thanking for his perspective and loving what he had to say, and that's really awesome. You know, he asked me to make a video on this thing, and I did that, but then you guys continued to offer your piece, and you're helping him also. That's the coolest thing. It's just the coolest thing. Oh my god. I just realized I didn't have the microphone down this entire time, so hopefully that didn't sound like complete garbage. Really sorry about that, guys. Damn it. Adamar says, I have a question on a hot topic that I have been struggling with for a while. I don't know if you have any experience yourself regarding this topic, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Last year I've been assigned as the head trainer in my dojo, not because my former sensei gave this position to me, but because our dojo had to kick him out because of his mental health issues and his alcohol problem. Man, that sucks. That said, he is only left out of the training part of things, but does still try to interfere with other stuff regarding the dojo. He looks down on me and disrespects me. He was a father figure for me, and I have looked up to him for many years, but since it became obvious to him that I would take on his position and not be just a little puppet that he would do as he said, it has been like this. I'm not willing to leave the dojo because I have a lot of good students there and a good team, but the fights between him and all the other trainers, including me, is affecting us a lot. And even though it happens outside of the dojo, our students are not oblivious to the matter and are also affected. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this topic. If you might have any advice for how you'd react in this situation. Anything on the topic would be appreciated, and I hope to hear from you. Benjamin, man, first off, I'm really sorry you're in this position, because this is not easy. This is tough. And I have been in some weird positions, similar, not exact. And those are for a different time. You know, I think open communication is one of the most important things that you can have. And open communication needs to be between you and the fellow trainers and the students on where things are at. And, you know, it's like you said, it's happening outside of the dojo, but they're not oblivious to it. Well, it might be useful to not only just assume they're not oblivious to it, but actually address it, to sit down and talk with them about what's going on and why things have gone the way that they've gone, and in some cases what they can do to help, or what things that they should do to keep themselves safe or out of it, or whatever it is that needs to be. And then communication with that instructor, with those situations, with the alcoholism, with the mental health issues. That conversation might not be easy, or it might not be very effective. It might not have much effect. If you feel like it would, it still has value, and it might be useful to have somebody else who, you know, if it's in a position where you feel like he doesn't have a lot of respect for you because maybe he feels like you stole something from him, that the school became yours now and isn't his, and he feels like something, you know, he's got feelings about that. Then if there's somebody that he does respect in the school, you know, maybe you guys can approach it together. Maybe hearing why that other person respects you and thinks you're the right person for the job would be helpful. Maybe him getting to hear what you're doing to continue on what he gave you, and the work that he did, and how you are continuing that work forward, and maybe hearing that from you, and maybe hearing that from somebody he is not having those issues with right now, could maybe help him feel a little bit better about the situation. Sometimes also in these situations, the best thing to do is just have separation. It's not a fun thing. It's not a fun conversation, and it doesn't happen easily, but sometimes there needs to be some distance for things to start healing again. You can't be in any kind of toxic relationship and hope that it will just heal itself. It takes time and energy and effort to do that healing, and it usually also means some separation, some space between people. I hope that's helpful. Those ones are always hard because I feel like they're really unique. But I wish you a lot of luck. And if there's anything else I can do, email me anytime, ken@kenfuTV. If there's anything that I can do, or any of the rest of you watching this, if you've got comments, if you've got advice, please reply to this thread and let's help Benjamin the best we can. Les Bubka says, I only disagree with one thing. For me, black belt is not the beginning, it's the middle. Going with your example of education, finishing high school, you learn the basics. Now choosing your path, you have some knowledge. So it's not a beginning, but a continuation of learning. I completely, 100% agree. And maybe I didn't actually communicate that really well, but that's exactly what I think. I think a lot of people, I made the comment about how people will say black belt is the beginning. And that's because I hear it all the time. And I heard it a ton in a lot of the Facebook comments and things like that. It's just the beginning. You're just getting started, all this stuff. And I, like you, Les, I don't believe that. I don't believe it's the beginning at all. I believe that it's not the end either, but it is the middle. It is a part. You can be excited. You can be excited like it's a new beginning, but it's not the beginning. So completely agree. Ryan Slider X says, I recently started implementing a kid-friendly version of the Dojo-kun. We call it the Karate Code of Conduct. Always be a good person. Always be honest. Always try hard. Always be nice to others. Karate is only for self-defense. Got a little Miyagi on that last one. I really like that. And I like the idea of creating something specific to the children, something a little bit easier to digest than all the Japanese. In the main karate class, we do the same thing, Japanese, but then we have in what we call our warriors class, it's kind of combined our jujitsu, karate, kali. It's got the foundations of all those so that kids have a lot of variety and get a good well-rounded thing. We did the same thing. We took different Dojo-kun and we did them into there. So things like always act with good manners, work to perfect your character, stuff like that. Having that in English, easy to understand. The other instructor coming from a Taekwondo background, so we had tenets like patience and courtesy and modesty and things, and they've got to understand them and explain how they're using them in their life. And I find that having those versions, those variations that are a little bit easier to digest goes a long way, and I think it's really great. And thank you for sharing that, because I really like the ones that you came up with. I think that's a solid set. Slider X also says, want to train? If you're in Long Beach, you can hit me up. Dude, I am going to. If I get over there, or maybe I'll just plan to go there so that we can train. I think that would be awesome. Jeffrey Fletcher says, my advice, continue training and learning in the system or style you're studying, or go on and start learning or training something new. Either way, a black belt is not an end goal, but an important stepping stone in a lifelong journey. Exactly. Kind of like Les. It's not the beginning, it's not the end. It's an important step. And I do think that your advice, your first advice of continue training and learning in your own system or style is really important. A lot of people start trying to look to the outside. And even in this video, I mentioned looking to the outside. That should never replace what you do, but it should have the ability to supplement it. It should have the ability to help you see what you do better. And so it's important that people realize that there's more in their art than just getting to that very first black belt step. Scott Garner says, black belt in 1990, on to Aikido, Jikundo, Kali. Just keep learning and throw out the ranks. Just keep learning, 100%. Throw out the ranks? I don't know. I feel that way. I felt that way a lot. I mean, like, that's just a rank, it's just a belt, it's just whatever. But the truth is, it only feels that way because I did it, because I have it. I think that it's a lot harder to feel that way and to get rid of rank if you've never experienced it. And I feel that it does have value. It has value for motivation. It has value for measurement of progress and for keeping people on track with their own personal growth. So now one thing that we did is we have rank, but colored belts, we don't have those. Even our nefutokake, where we keep the rank, is kept in a different room. So there's the rank, and then you walk into the other room, so you leave that outside. You have rank, it exists, you leave that outside, and you put on your white belt and you train on the mat. I really like that. I think it's really important because it separates the idea that your rank is your ability and it is your training. It's not. And you'll always prove it on the mat. Anybody could wear any colored belt, any black belt, any whatever, and when you see them move, when you see them train on the mat, you'll know. It's not optional. If you just go buy a black belt and you put one on and you get on the mat, everyone in the room will know that you're not one, because you won't have the skill and ability of that. If you have a higher rank and you're wearing a lower rank, or you have not been promoted to your rank, everybody in the room will know that too. People know what skill looks like, especially if they've been training for a while. So I do think that rank needs to not be as important. But throwing it out, I don't agree, because I feel like there's a lot of value to it. Sir James Gray says, speaking from my personal experience, the Q ranks prepared me for what the Udansha ranks demanded from me. I was not in a hurry to receive my first degree black belt. I was more concerned in making sure that I was mentally prepared as well as physically ready. Once I stepped into the realm of the Udansha, I was in a different league, so to speak, of peers, and had access to a different caliber of teacher. I was then being taught by the teacher of teachers. And now I'm a teacher of teachers, and I get to teach at seminars. But to get here, my secret was this: set no expectations on myself. I enjoyed the training and not only submitted to the process, but I trusted the process. And I'm really glad that that worked out really good for you, because that's what the process should be there for. And I feel like not all processes are created equal, and that can lead to bad situations or whatever. But I'm glad that the process that you were a part of was able to fulfill that for you. And I also think it's pretty interesting that when you moved into black belt, you had access to a different caliber of teacher. That's kind of an older school way of doing things, where there are certain teachers or certain people that you don't work with nearly as much until you've kind of earned your right to kind of work with them. And so that's kind of an interesting deal, and it was kind of cool to hear you talk about that. All right, guys, that's it. If you've got comments for this week's video, if you have things that you want to say to Craige, and things that you want to say about this topic of being the last black belt in your setup, drop them in the comments of this video, and we'll talk about them next week. Until then, I'll catch you later. Okay, that's it for today. What do you think? What situations are you running into that it's making it hard for you to continue to make progress or feel like you're growing? Or what areas do you feel like you're stagnant in? What areas do you feel like you're failing yourself or other people in? Comment that and let's talk about it. And maybe next week we'll have a conversation about that. And let's just continue to try to help each other grow. The internet and even this pandemic has gone to make us so much more connected and available to work with each other than ever before. So let's take advantage of it. If you like what I'm doing, if you like videos like this, you can subscribe right here. If you want to see a playlist of these Ken Learns Kenfu videos, they're right here. And here's a couple videos that you might like. I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and I'll catch you in the next one.